Hey Rich, how are you?
Hey, brother, how's it going?
Not bad. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm living the dream. It's 70 degrees in Atlanta, so yeah, the sun gods are shining down on me brightly, so it's beautiful.
Can't get better than that.
No, sir.
It's good to catch up with you again.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you for making time to speak with me.
Yeah, of course. In the time since we last spoke, you guys released the album Judas, and the title track was obviously huge for you. Went on to reach number five. What's a memory from the album cycle out of the success that really stands out for you?
Well, I mean, the best part for me was our because we had a single that was on the charts and was, really, we started off as a band that was WWE superstar Chris Jericho and members of Stuck Mojo. And we spent a lot of time building an audience, just, trying to bridge the gap between our two fan bases um, and just trying to, earn our respects, new band. And it's amazing the power of a single. We just had never had that before. And it changed our lives in a lot of ways because we were all of a sudden playing on bigger venues. Our shows were sold out and things were just changing so rapidly in a way that was great because it allowed us to put on bigger shows because we were on bigger stages. We brought out bigger production, all the things that we always wanted to do as a band. But we, you know, as they say, you are where you are. Um, and a lot of the times we were, doing tours, playing cool 500 capacity rock clubs. And now we've got to the place where we can get bigger and better. And it's been fantastic for us. I mean, we're at our core, we're just fanboys. I mean, that's how Chris and I met. We just struck up a conversation backstage at a show, talking about our love for Priest and Maiden and Accept and Striper and Boston and Journey, and here we are, 23 years later, still doing it for that same passion. And so it's been a great ride.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. You mentioned the different size stages you've played. I've seen you play the small clubs. I last saw you sharing an arena with Nickelback. And I found that no matter the size of the stage, the Fozzy live show is always there. There's the big energy of a rock show. But I was wondering specifically, where do you get your energy? The first time you and I spoke, I'd been a fan for years, but I'd never seen the band perform. And so, we're just chatting and you're fairly laid back. And then you go out on stage, and the second the band starts, I don't think you stayed still for more than 2 seconds. You got guitars flying around, feet up in the air. So, where do you find that inspiration, the motivation that gives you the energy for what you do on stage like that?
All my heroes were those guys, I mean, Eddie Van Halen and Flea, uh, just, and I also grew up, I was a punk rock kid too. I mean, I love the Suicidal Tendencies and DRI and, and I love the kind of thrash mosh era of Anthrax. I mean, Scott Ian was always the super crazy energetic guy on stage, and I was always attracted to those high energy. I mean, some of my favorite frontmen were Steve Perry from Journey, who never stopped running from one side of the stage to another unless he's in a ballad, or Axl Rose. I loved energy. I mean, that's what I fed off of. My favorite band as a kid was Iron Maiden, and there's nobody who moves around more than Bruce.
No.
And I was always attracted to that. And I love Dave and Adrian, but they were support players for this chaos that was the two guys who were going nuts, which was Steve and Bruce.
Of course.
And I find that Jericho and I are kind of those two guys where, it not every if everybody in the Chili Peppers are going nuts, it's a mess, right? For Shanti and Chad have got to be laying down pocket, and they're the guys who are giving you the cool stuff, and then and Anthony and Flea are bringing the fire. And
Yeah.
I've always thought that that kind of chemistry worked because Michael Anthony was always a fantastic bass player and he had great energy, but he wasn't doing the same thing that Dave and Eddie were doing. And Alex had more of a laid back approach. And I think that's the key to a great band is chemistry, and having some dynamics within the chemistry of the band. And we're just lucky that it happened that way. It wasn't, we weren't auditioning people to say, how much do you move around? Like, sometimes things just kind of happen that way. And I came from my band prior to Fozzy was Stuck Mojo, and we came up in the early 90s rap rock scene. And that was all about, Faith No More and the Chili Peppers, and that whole scene where in Pantera, it just was chaos. And it was just about, and we always toured with these Northeastern hardcore bands in Europe, and being exposed to the, that Northeast hardcore scene in Europe, where you just had these, Brooklyn and Boston based bands that were just going nuts. And I just loved it. It was like even though stylistically, musically, those chefs weren't cooking for my palate. What they were doing resonated 100% with me. And I would still go to see those shows because I love Hatebreed, because I love what happens at a Hatebreed show, even though stylistically I'd much rather listen to a Boston or a Styx album, because those guys are cooking for my palate. Even though I don't play like Boston or Styx, it's the same thing. Jericho's favorite band is the Stones. He doesn't sing anything like Jagger. He doesn't do anything like Jagger, but it's still, you know how it is. It's I'm sure Rob Zombie doesn't just go to horror movies. I'm sure he loves Mel Brooks movies, and that, we don't always, our output doesn't always have to be what our passions lie and what we listen to or what we watch in our own personal time. And I think that's almost better, because if I'm listening to Pantera all the time, our records will sound like Pantera, and it's just natural. It's through osmosis. I mean, yep. Zakk Wylde was my hero for so many, and he still is. But I was listening to nothing. But when No Rest for the Wicked and No More Tears came out, those were my Bible records. And it was no wonder everything I was writing sounded just like Zakk Wylde for years, because that was my blueprint. And I find that the more I listen to Paul Simon, because Paul Simon is an incredible artist in a different way, it helps me musically in that I'm listening to different ideas, and lyrically, he's just doing things that are genius in such a different way. And that's my story of how I arrived at the guy who loves to go nuts on stage. But I still find myself much more comfortable in a relaxed environment than I do in some chaotic, party scene. I can partition that for the show.
That makes sense. Those pieces come together and it shows on stage.
Thanks.
So you guys have your 8th album coming out called Boombox, and you'd originally been planning to release it in 2020. We obviously all know what's happened since then. What was it like for you to finish making an album during a pandemic? Did you guys have it finished and you just delayed it, or were you able to get together? Were you still writing, sending things back and forth? How did that all work out for you guys?
Yeah, I guess we kind of thought we were going to be done sooner than we were, but as the door was being pushed, down the road, it was just, our producer said, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable getting together. It's not the responsible thing to do. We should all kind of hunker down and try maybe doing some Zoom sessions." We tried that; it didn't really work. Like, that energy is sitting in the room, and it was different. It's
hard to replicate that.
It really was. So we just wrote on our own, and then when everybody felt like we could say, everybody at some point had either had COVID and had the jab or both, and we just said, "Hey, we'll wear masks." We got together during the Delta variant, where everybody was really worried, because that seemed like it was a much more precarious time. So we just did it smartly. I mean, our producer, Johnny, was very conscientious of making sure that we were away from each other. So we got in a big room, and we're all, at least we're in the same room.
Right.
And it was weird. I mean, I'm not going to lie, it was strange, but it was what had to happen. Living in different times, and we just had to negotiate it the best that we could. Well, the good news was it gave us more time to develop ideas that were already great, and also bring new ideas to the table. My favorite part of it is that all the heavy material on the album all came later, which is the way it always is anyway for us, because I think the idea is, whereas with some other bands, you always see the behind the music where they write this record and then the label goes, "I just don't hear a hit, guys. We're going to have to go back and get the single." We always front load that stuff. We always go in and what's the best ideas? What's the best hooks we got? Let's put it on the table. Let's work that stuff out. And we had all that stuff early on. What we didn't have were a bunch of punishing riffs and a bunch of really great, heavy cuts. And that was great because then I was during the real hardcore part of the pandemic. I was just at home with the drum machine, just, riffing and riffing and riffing and going, and really on my phone. I just would sit down and have a little practice amp and sit down with a drum machine and riff, 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 riff. Idea one, idea two. And then I started cataloging ideas, putting stuff together. And then I'd start sending them to the guys. What are you feeling? What's good? And then my favorite ideas I wouldn't send out because I didn't want them to shoot them down and say, nah. I would save them for our sessions together. And I feel like this is our best Fozzy album. I think Judas is a fantastic record, but we didn't allow ourselves this process of at the end coming up with the real banger riffs. I would have been happier with Judas if we had 2 or 3 more really crushing songs to really make it a more balanced meal. Because I'm a big pop guy. I mean, most of the music I listen to is pop. It's not new pop. It's 70s and 80s pop. But I'm a sucker for great songs, and I always have been. Even when Metallica put out the Black record, I was the first guy to go, yeah. And when the Chili Peppers put out Blood Sugar Sex Magic, I was like, yeah. Like I'm a big fan of big songs, and part of it is probably because my mom listened to John Denver and Gordon Lightfoot and just the pop music of the 70s. I mean, that was the music I grew up listening to in the early 80s. The Bee Gees are my favorite band when I was 7 or 8 years old. The Saturday Night Fever soundtrack was the album, and then the Grease soundtrack. It wasn't until I heard AC/DC and then Ozzy Osbourne in the early 80s that things really changed for me. And it, testosterone and hairs on my my genitals then changed everything. It was like, and I'm lucky that I married the two things. They both feel right to me. But I feel like a Fozzy record is not right unless it lives in both worlds, where it's got these big super hooks and at the same time has the big riffs. And I feel like we just did it. And it took the extra year, I think, to get it right. I think if we'd have put this out in 2020, we may not have had this magic. It took a little more time. Just like I know there were a lot of authors who were also writing in the pandemic, and it gave publishers chances to go back and do second, third drafts and really to make some refinements in some places where it could make for a better book. And I feel like that's what we did.
Well, I look forward to hearing the result of that. So far, we've heard Sane and Nowhere to Run. What are some of the other songs, especially those heavy songs you mentioned, that you're looking forward to audiences having a chance to hear once the album's out?
Yeah, the next single is called I Still Burn, and it's got a crushing riff, but it lives in both worlds. It's kind of like Judas, and then it's got the riff, and it also has got the melodic side. So it's a really well-balanced, perfect song. But then we've got a song called Purifier, which is just a freaking 80s headbanger. It could have easily have been a Maiden or a Motley song. It has that early 80s song, Wrathchild, that early era. It's just real raw. And then we have a song called the Vulture Club, which it's a crushing fast rhythm. And the hardest part about it is how do you naturally get Chris Jericho, who is a classic rock, classic metal singer, over a thrashy beat? How do you do it? Because you don't want him forcing something that's not natural vocally. So that's what really took the time, is to get Chris and these heavy songs to marry into this thing that felt like they belonged in the same universe. And that's why I'm glad we had the time, because it's easy. I mean, God, every cool guitar player who works at Guitar Center can play a really cool Animals as Leader riff. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, it's that thing. And then you've got guys who can just sing the phone book. You're like, this is so amazing. The trick is how do you live within the context of a band scenario where you've got 4 or 5 different ideas and a producer who's got his own ideas, and everybody's working together. And that's where the balance is that, and it works good for us because our producer Johnny and I, we frame the house. and then we bring the dudes in, and then all of a sudden you have a home. We just build the kind of structure. We don't say this is the bass line, learn this. This is the drum patterns, you have to play it like this. Here's all the melodies and lyrics. We all participate in building that. And I don't write every riff. Johnny's a good guitar player. And our bass player comes up with riffs too. So it's nice to have that collaboration. That's what makes you a band.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to checking some of those songs out. Speaking again of Sane, you guys filmed the music for that on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
So I want to know what that was like. Whose idea was it? Was it just one day and you had to write it 10 times in a row? Or do you just have one take? Hope you get it?
No, our goal was to try to do it 4 or 5 times and get one take. And the reason we shot this at this particular amusement park is because this is the longest wooden roller coaster in the world. So the ride is 2 minutes and 48 seconds. So we realized, okay, so we weren't going to be able to do just one ride, but this roller coaster had several tunnels. So they were great edit points. We could get in and out of shots in the tunnels to make it look like one shot, because we were kind of, we're kind of fascinated with the idea of what would this look like if we could make it look like a one shot deal. And how do you kind of, like Hitchcock used to get in and out of changing, film reels by like panning into something and then panning back out of it to make it look like there wasn't an edit. So we spent some time on that. The problem that we didn't consider was every roller coaster that all of us have ridden are all about a minute long or a minute 15 long, which is great. You just freaking chaos, G-forces, everybody's going nuts. And then you get off and you got 10 or 15 minutes, you wait in line again, and then you reload, you're back on the roller coaster. What we didn't take in consideration was 2 minutes and 45 seconds of a wooden roller coaster, which is not smooth like these modern metal coasters, which catch G-forces, but they don't beat you up. So the G-forces combined with the roughness of the wooden coaster, combined with 2 minutes 8 seconds. We thought we could do this 10 times. After the second time, our guitar player got sick, Billy. And we were like, oh, we're in trouble. Like, we're in big trouble here. I was bragging to everybody. I got this, man. It's perfect. The problem was the first 2 takes were no good, because the first take, the camera rattled loose. So it was shaking and vibrating. So that take was a no good. The second take, we lost audio. So the third take was the take that I started feeling sick. Now, I didn't throw up, but it started to get me. And then the fourth take is when everybody else was feeling ill. Of course, Chris will never tell you, because he's a man's man, so he ain't going to tell you he's feeling bad. All right. So, I mean, he's used to people punching him for a living. So he's not, I'm getting no indication for him, but the rest of us are like in a spot where we're in trouble. But we did 6 takes in all, and we had 4 takes to edit from. So that was the story. And I think if we had a roller coaster that was a minute and a half long, we'd have been able to get 12 or 15. The problem was the long rides. And this wasn't one of those coasters. We had a bunch of chat, slow fall. And this was like, and it was awesome.
It certainly looks that way in the video.
It was incredible. I was so exhilarated because it was so much fun. And then we just, it's like anybody. It's like, I'm sure guys that go into the toughest, most incredibly in shape guys who go into special forces training think they got this until they don't. and we're musicians, it's not like Chris is the only athlete in the group of us. So, I think we just overestimated, because we're all in fairly decent shape. We eat right and we exercise. We just thought we got this. We just didn't. So, but it was fantastic. And it was my idea. And everybody was cussing me after ride 5. We were like, we got to do one more, because we had to do the guitar off the coaster throw. And so, so it was great, man. It was a fun idea. And it also helped us, because Chris is like really opposed to doing videos of a dark nature. I think he just feels like Fozzy needs to be a rock and roll band that, although we can deal with some dark subject matter, we don't need to be, we don't need people like taking antidepressants after they watch our videos and listen to this. He wants to bring the party as well. Anybody who's seen Chris's with Fozzy, it's like he has much more in common with David Lee Roth and Paul Stanley than he ever will with Glenn Danzig. And that's just because that's who he is. And he could always pretend to be somebody, but that's not who we are. We are this. The band is the sum total of its characters that are in the band. And I felt like, and Chris was like, we got to find a way to do, even though Sane is a song about a crazy world where being a sane person in an insane world no longer works. You almost have to be crazy to navigate, the world and that we're living in. But he was like, but I don't want to do a song I don't want to do a song where dudes are in straitjackets and I don't know. No, this has to be fun. So the roller coaster idea seemed crazy enough to harness that, but it was still fun.
Well, now the pressure's on to come up with something even bigger and more fun for the next one.
I know. I don't even know what that's going to be. I know it's like, we talked about what's the next thing, like jumping out of an airplane, and it's like, what's the, like, you can't top it.
Yeah, I think it was a great idea that worked out. So as you head into a tour with a new album coming out, you obviously want to play the new songs. But the more new songs you play, the fewer old songs you get to play. So how do you guys find the balance of what you put in the set list? And do we have any chance of hearing material from the Happenstance era on this tour?
Yeah, I think we will. I think at least one, or I think maybe one song maybe is from Happenstance, or maybe two. But it's very difficult, and part of the reason is that the band's own enthusiasm towards the new material. That's why when you go see Iron Maiden and they're like, we're going to play the whole album in its entirety, and the fans roll their eyes and go, no, please, no. But it's all just kind of comes down to that the balance of wanting to, say thank you to your fans who were with you from the very beginning by honoring the early material, and also letting the band play the music that they're super excited about, because it really represents more of who we are as a band now than who we were in 2002. 20 years ago, we were just such different people, and this new material just feels like it resonates better with us as a band. And we've had some lineup changes, so the new material represents the guys who are currently in the band. They like playing it more because they put their stamp on it. It feels,
of course,
so there are a lot of reasons why. I think we'll probably play 4 songs off the new album. I think that's what it's kind of looking like now. It may get up to as many as 5. And we play 15 or 16 songs. So it's then becomes the difficult task of figuring out what that's like. And Chris's favorite bands are Iron Maiden and Metallica and Dream Theater. And I think what they do as bands is that there's always an idea of changing things up from tour to tour. So as this album cycle evolves, I'm sure there'll be some changes in the set. And we do a 5-song VIP concert every day for fans. And that's really cool because we play To Kill a Stranger, and we play these older songs. We play Eat the Rich from the first album, and we do songs that don't appear on, in the set, but it's a way for the hardcore fans who really have been with us for a long time, and they want that kind of special treatment. And also most of our fans are new fans. We're playing, when you've seen us, you probably saw us in front of 350 or 400 people, and now we're playing in front of 1,000 people, and those are all new fans who really are. Some of them are deep diving, but a lot of them are just kind of jumped on board. So it's always a balance, and we're both desires to stay current and at the same time stay true to those fans who were with you from the beginning.
Well, I look forward to the show.
Thank you.
We'll be there in Providence. The venue's about a mile outside that window.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's awesome. Well, I'm so glad I got a chance to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rich. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, see you soon, brother. Thank you very much. Take care.
Bye-bye.